Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
God bless you, dear listeners, to Radio Journal of Ronda Chervin, and this is Ronda Chervin. And I'm continuing to read aloud the manuscript of the new book of mine coming out from En Route Books eventually, called Crisis in the Church. Now, it's not a thing where you could just come in the middle unless you listen to the first part. So I have 2 recordings already, and please listen to those recordings for the intro and day 1 before listening to today, day 2. Otherwise, you won't understand what it's all about. So here is day 2, and the themes are liturgy, communal versus transcendent, and Catholic Church, one of many good churches versus one true church. And here we are at the morning session. After breakfast the next morning, Father Doria gave an introductory talk to the participants about the morning theme. He began with these remarks about the topics of the first day. Father Doria, I've been giving a lot of thought to the question of anger. Several of you have challenged me along these lines. There are plenty of people who dissent from church teachings or are militantly loyal to them, but who are not angry. Maybe you need more categories in your spectrum. Here is my experience. Those who are adherents in most of these divisive issues but are not angry are still divisive just the same. For example, if a Catholic priest or professor calmly states that she thinks there ought to be same-sex marriages, this will divide him or her from those who absolutely don't think so, even if neither of the 2 interlocutors gets angry. Or if a priest or professor starts talking about the glories of the Latin Tridentine Mass, those who dislike it without becoming angry may avoid that priest or that professor's courses from then on. Anger is not always hot. Cold anger is often expressed not by yelling, but by withdrawal. Now, those of an angry temperament, also called cholerics, mostly will be much more angry than laid-back phlegmatics. Phlegmatics means laid-back types. But even usually laid-back Catholics can become extremely angry about particular issues. However, if you hate not just the sin, but also the sinner, becoming less angry because of our dialogues and healing sessions will get you less years in purgatory. Laughter. Our first topic for dialogue today is liturgy. I have made up the terms communal versus transcendent to avoid the usual Latin versus vernacular, just to get you to think outside the box. Another way some put the division is horizontal versus vertical. Now, you don't have to be rocket scientists to realize that I, your host, try to blend the 2 poles. I believe Holy Mass should be warmly communal, but also reverently transcendent. So does that make everyone happy who comes to our Masses at St. Athanasius? Not really. Some tell me that if I was a true magisterial Catholic, I would be having the Tridentine Latin Mass here all the time. Others wish the music was less contemporary, with more of the old, the traditional English hymns. Others, especially charismatics, want the gesture of peace to go on for 15 minutes with every participant shaking the hands of every other throughout the whole chapel. Many militant fours and all fives think that the whole problem is that so many Catholics no longer believe in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, thinking it's really just a symbol. They usually think that lack of belief in this mystery is because we no longer kneel at the altar to receive Holy Communion, and the option to receive in the hand has led to less of a feeling of the sacredness of the host. Now, but radical ones think that having women priests would make the liturgy less patriarchal. Many post-Vatican II evolving Catholics, number twos, think the change to the vernacular and the elimination of altar rails is precisely what Jesus wants. Less patriarchal because the priest isn't separated so much from the people as in the old liturgy, or speaking in a language we don't understand. At the Last Supper, the language was probably Aramaic, and the reception of the Eucharist was at a dining table. I'm sure you will have your own examples of divisions in the church on liturgy. Here are your questions for dialoguing with the same group you talked to yesterday for these more formal sessions. Did you ever regularly attend Masses in Latin before Vatican II? What did you like about them, or what did you not like? What do you like about the Masses you usually attend in your parish or Catholic institution now? What do you wish could be different? Again, don't interrupt or respond until each person has had his or her say. When James and I settled down on our table with our coffee and snacks, I began saying with a laugh, here is where we don't fit easily into your 2 on the spectrum or me with my 4, because I remember the one time I visited you at your home, it was a Gregorian chant convent you took me to for Sunday Mass. James, smiling, yes, I still go to that convent. I like the continuity with the old church of my childhood. I rather dislike the contemporary hymns in most parishes. They are musically inferior. Rhonda, I'm an extremist on liturgy. I like best either charismatic masses with gospel-type songs or high Latin masses. One way I like to explain it is this. The traditional Mass appeals to the soul. The contemporary Mass appeals to the psyche, as in how you come in feeling low and then sing, Here I Am, Lord, and you feel better. The charismatic Mass appeals to the gut, the passionate desire to be saved. James, I'm afraid emotion in religion has almost replaced the spiritual. Shouldn't the liturgy precisely elevate us into the world of the soul? Rhonda, yes, but how can the church claim to be a community when most of the parishioners don't even know each other's names, no less have deigned to even touch each other's hands? Or how about bad memories so many Catholics before Vatican II had of priests and sisters who were cruelly punishing? When I first taught philosophy of God, one student answered the question, who is God, with the answer, the one who can zap you out of existence. James, I find some of those accounts of cruel priests and sisters to be exaggerated. They are always told as if the children were only mildly mischievous, whereas in reality, many of them were punished for cruel or totally disruptive things they were doing. I find that the key underlying problem about liturgy is that most Catholics walk into the church, their minds still on their problems in family or work. Then they chat with friends until the liturgy begins. I preferred when the people were taught to come early and become what we call recollected, in contemporary language, deeply centered in Christ. Rhonda, that's certainly true. A priest who taught at St. Paul's in the theology department got me to wonder whether it wouldn't be better to have the weekend Mass as reverent as possible. And a praise and worship service once a week could provide the opportunity for themes of loud praise and the exercise of the charismatic gifts of the Spirit. James, are you still involved with such prayer groups, Rhonda? I heard the movement dwindled here in the United States. Rhonda, yes, after years of thinking I belonged with lay groups such as Benedictine Oblates or Franciscans or Dominicans, I realized that my spirituality is essentially charismatic. I go to a small parish prayer group every week. James. Oh, we haven't talked yet about liturgical dance. Your twin sister, Carla De Sola, was a pioneer in that. I often saw her leading dances at masses here at St. Athanasius or at conferences. Whenever I pray Psalm 149, let us praise the Lord with festive dance, I think of her. Rhonda, yes, she still has a company now on the West Coast called Omega West. Now there's a divisive matter. U.S. bishops banned dance at Mass many decades ago, but then in the document on liturgy from the Vatican, it was left up to the bishop. And even John Paul II used to join in sacred dance with the parishioners when visiting Africa. James, I love the way Carla dances and those in her company, but not always the liturgical dance of others who are less graceful. Rhonda, a huge issue that 4s and 5s bring up is the distraction, especially for men, in seeing female bodies in motion during Mass where they want to concentrate on the spiritual. Others, however, think that the beauty of dance helps Mass goers to avoid getting into a sort of numb, bored state of mind. It is more holistic. James, the Eucharist itself is so holistic and incarnational. In other religious traditions, the whole effort is to detach from everything physical. But in our Eucharist, we experience how Christ wants to enter into matter, right into our body. Yes, Rhonda, yes. When I teach groups about spirituality, I like to encourage daily Mass for those who can go without difficulty. They seem to like this almost dance image I have. If Jesus wants to leap down from heaven through the hands of the priest to enter your body, shouldn't you be there to receive him? James smiled. I like the imagery you use in your books, Rhonda. The Mass. During the homily, Father Doria surprised some of us oldies with this story. I was giving a retreat for priests. I asked them to write on a piece of paper without their name on it what was their greatest joy as a priest. 90% of them wrote, celebrating the Eucharist. Now we have lunch. Father Doria, let me remind you again not to sit at the same table with your morning sharing group and to spend part of the time telling others about incidents in the church in general that help you feel less divided from those in other categories in the spectrum. A younger theology professor strong on social justice issues told us about a militantly Orthodox priest in his parish. This priest urged the people to go to confession for their sexual sins at least once a month in his homilies, but at the same time he personally led after-school programs for all the poor gang kids in his parish area. This kept this professor from thinking wrongly that all militantly Orthodox priests on morality don't care about the poor. Rhonda, told about how moved I am when I see that someone I would rate as a 2 does something totally surprising. A bishop I thought of as a dissenter when he used to visit the college where I taught would walk around the quad saying the rosary on large beads. He also surprised me by coming to the first Operation Rescue pro-life protest before we arrived and telling the police that if you harm any of these peaceful protesters, you will go to hell. A philosophy professor told about how surprised she was to meet a layman who was joining an order of same-sex attraction men who would be promoting the Latin Mass. Now, of course, this would not be a possibility for the usual groups of Latin Mass proponents, but it shows how many unexpected things are going on in our church right now. Someone read an article claiming that some charismatics are moving toward the Latin Mass. Adoration. In spite of a good nap, I came to adoration in the chapel feeling tired and discouraged. So many divisions, so much anger. Jesus, help me. Why are you allowing all this mess in your church? I was consoled that Jesus seemed to tell me, I suffer with these divisions. Still, I have such joy in my good priest sons and consecrated religious and in faithful laity such as you. When you feel sad, bury yourself in my heart. Now we have the afternoon session, the Catholic Church, one among many good churches versus one true church. Father Doria, my friends, you know I don't have a PhD in theology like many of you. So instead of presenting a disquisition, I will simply tell you the way I see it. My favorite image comes from John Paul II, where he described the light of Christ in the Catholic Church being like the pinnacle of a triangle with rays extending downward. The idea was that other religions participate in the light in different ways. Some would interpret such an image to mean that it doesn't matter what Christian church or what religion you belong to as long as you follow the light you see. That might be the perspective of some religious anthropologists, but doesn't jive with so many statements of Jesus about going forth to baptize all nations in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Or as one of you PhDs once said about evangelization, how could you know Jesus and not want everyone to know him? Okay, so Father Doria continues, we want to eschew any kind of indifferentism that was already gaining ground in the beginning of the 20th century. On the other hand, no matter what the problems of ecumenical and interfaith dialogue, few of us would want to go back to the time where many Catholics only saw the errors in other religions and never acknowledged any truths at all in them. So here's your question for your afternoon small group sharing. Why are you still a Catholic? Rhonda, I don't think Father Doria has them, but I recently edited a whole series of booklets with that title, Why I Am Still a Catholic. My purpose was to reach the many doubters of today's church, often due to the scandals, but often the scandals are only the last straw of uneasiness, sometimes over decades, about many things. James, I may seem simplistic, but I'm still a Catholic for the reason that I love the church. I love her sacraments, I love her buildings, her art, her music, and especially her saintly mystics. Rhonda, well put. A+, James. When I hear people saying they are leaving the church over the scandals, I say, there was a scandalous football coach. I didn't notice anyone dropping watching football because of it. Just the same, you don't identify with, James, you don't identify with moderates or militant magisterial Catholics. How come? James, I suppose because of the influence of Teilhard de Chardin, the great Jesuit archaeologist theologian who taught us to think in terms of evolution of the church and the world. Moderates seem to me to lack passion, but militants, even you, my dear old friend, seem to me to be so defensive as to lack openness to evolving truths. Rhonda smiling. I actually read almost all of Teilhard de Chardin in graduate school. He was all the rage when I was studying here in the 60s. I came to think this way about his optimism. At the end of World War II, there was such relief. It opened some thinkers to want to believe that a new great world order would evolve. The Christian form of this optimism of Teilhard was to think we were moving from the alpha to the omega through the evolution of world history. From a psychological standpoint, I sometimes think that sanguines, that's optimists, go for this kind of false hope. Melancholics, pessimists, never. But since we should all be realists instead of optimists or pessimists, the 20th century, where millions were killed by Soviet and Chinese communists and 60 million innocent babies were aborted, hardly looks like the ascent of mankind to an evolved fullness of justice. James, what a progress! Economic development of the world, sensitivity to ecological issues, greater equality of women with men. Rhonda, let's leave these topics to other days of this week. I want to tell you about how I overcome doubts about the church. James, go ahead. We have so much more time for these sessions than only being us two at the table. Rhonda, when I get doubts about the church, I review in my mind all the reasons I became a Catholic so many years ago. Philosophical proofs for the existence of God, and nowadays, in addition, the writing of scientists who insist science shows the existence of God. Proofs for the divinity of Christ, like those of C.S. Lewis, where there is no way he could just be a good person or even a prophet, given what his words meant in the context of Judaism. As well, I like to say that the Passion movie proves the resurrection, because how would the disciples ever have opened themselves up to such torture as it really was if they hadn't seen the resurrection? Proofs that Jesus wanted to form a church. There is nothing in the New Testament that would ever give you the impression that he wanted single individuals to simply respond to him and have nothing to do with other Christians. What about Protestant churches? No way does private interpretation lead to stability of church body. Instead, we have 40,000 Christian churches from people deciding what Christ's truth is without a magisterial authority. Slowly learning in graduate school why the church teaches that certain actions are intrinsically evil, not simply man-made rules. Seeing how saints of the past not only survived division, but helped grow the church for new generations out of the ashes of sinful patterns and false theories. James, I would go along with all that you say, except that I don't think of all of those points preclude growth throughout the centuries. Let's take something like slavery. In the time of the Old and New Testament, it was accepted. It took centuries before it was realized that slavery was incompatible with the free nature of human persons and could never be justified. Couldn't the same type of evolution occur in other areas of Catholic ethics? Rhonda, aha! I happen to have researched that area for teaching ethics. I always insist on the difference between development of a teaching and contradiction, following the famous book of St. Cardinal Newman, The Development of Christian Doctrine. Briefly, slavery in the time of the Old and New Testament was the only alternative to killing the enemy when an army was victorious. It was more like indentured servitude, and slaves were not usually treated at all the way they were in the Americas in our early history. When the slave trade began, it was roundly denounced by the slave trade. It was roundly denounced by the magisterium of the church, even though buying slaves already living in a country with a view to using them as laborers was not considered to be intrinsically evil. So it was a development rather than a contradiction to insist that any kind of slave-like ownership of labor of another human being is wrong. Or in the case of considering taking interest on a loan to be intrinsically wrong, but later allowing it, There was a change in society when through banking, giving loans at interest became a help to the poorest citizens. So it is argued it is still intrinsically wrong to charge exorbitant interest on a loan, but giving loans and having them paid back with interest is a development rather than a contradiction. James. Splitting hairs, perhaps? Why not say that changing historical conditions can alter moral teaching? So when young people married at 13 and 15 at puberty, it was easier to be chaste until marriage, whereas now it is much harder at the peak of sexual energy to wait some 10 years to marry. And so a couple lacking the finances to marry while in college could have sex while engaged, no? Rhonda, raising her voice. Yeah, sure. And meanwhile using contraceptives, which at least half the time destroy the already formed embryo in the womb, or aborting the baby if they conceive in spite of contraceptives. I was getting very angry. James, these topics will come up tomorrow. Meanwhile, it's almost dinner time. Dinner. Father Doria. That was a pretty heavy topic. How about relaxing at dinner and talking about something totally different, such as what your all-time favorite movies or novels are? Due to age differences between us, choices at this dinner ranged all the way from Gone with the Wind and the Sound of Music and mine Fiddler on the Roof to Hero and Matrix. Healing session. I came to the healing session exhausted from the argument in the afternoon with James. I was eager to see what Father Doria could say to help me have more hope. Father Doria, let me remind you that we have confession at 8 p.m. I wondered if I should confess getting so angry at James about sex outside of marriage. Father Doria began with a prayer of thanksgiving for our liturgy and for the Church itself, host of Holy Mass. Dear God, we thank you for sending your Son to create a way of worship so mystical and beautiful as is this memorial of his crucifixion and resurrection. We thank you for all the priests throughout the centuries who have given their lives to make the Eucharist possible for us. We thank you that throughout the centuries your Holy Spirit has triumphed over so many divisions, and we pray that indeed one day we all may be one in faith. Now I ask each one of you here present to enter into this thanksgiving from the depth of your heart during 10 minutes of silence. During that silent time, I, Rhonda, prayed, "Oh my Jesus, let me never take for granted your sacred liturgy and your church through all its holy sacraments." Well, the Doria then continued. For some of you, the authority of the magisterium of the church has become controversial. You may associate different 20th and 21st century popes with teachings you disagree with. You may believe that those in your spectrum of the church are championing the teachings of the future church that Jesus wants to replace some antiquated teachings of the past. You may think that the present Pope is trying to replace true teachings with erroneous ones. Here is my prayer for you if such is the case. Jesus, my Lord, my Savior, beloved friend and teacher, please enlighten the minds, hearts, and souls of all here present, that nothing contrary to the truth may hold us captive. Even when we are convinced that we believe only what you have revealed in Scripture and through tradition, help us to speak that truth with love, that we may not stir up contradiction by our very manner of presenting it. Surely that last word was for me, I thought ruefully. As I enunciate an examination of conscience I wrote for this group, consider anything that rings true as something to ponder for confession this evening or in the future. If there is any perennial teaching of the church that I have doubted or rejected because I needed to rationalize about some sin or weakness in my own life, Let me humbly admit to this origin of dissent. If there are teachings of others in the spectrum that have truth in them that I glide over because I resent other beliefs of those Catholics, help me to ponder them to achieve greater balance. If I have been demeaning and ridiculing in conversation with opponents of the truth, or in my own way of describing them to my allies, may I learn from the Holy Spirit how to speak the truth in love. At that point, Father Doria dimmed the lights, reminding us the confession would be available in 30 minutes. I, Rhonda, made a general confession of years and years of speaking the truth with anger versus love. So that's the end of my chapter 2, day 2 of this book, Crisis in the Church. And again, this will be published by En route Books. If you want to dialogue with me about any of these things, you could reach me at my email, which is my name backwards. That is my last name first, Chervin, Rhonda with no H in Rhonda, at gmail.com. God bless you all.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.